this video, I had the idea to combine two thoughts that I had about making a Lightbox video. One was to do a landscape, and the other was to use this set of Daniel Smith watercolors that I had been gifted for Christmas. It is a mineral watercolor set, and I think the colors in the set are really beautiful, and I think they'll go perfect with this reference photo that I have of the Portland Head Lighthouse in Maine. And so I want to take the reference photo that I have and do the tracing so that it is on the watercolor paper. And then I'm going to use this set of watercolors to complete the watercolor painting. This set also comes with this bottle of watercolor ground, which is useful if you're painting on a surface other than watercolor paper, but today I'm not doing that, so I don't need to use that. I know that they're not quite the colors that are in the photo, but that's okay because I like how these colors go together, and I also think that it's okay that you don't stick to your reference photo exactly if you don't want to. You're the artist, so it's up to you how you want to go about creating your artwork. So I have not used this set. Like I said, I got it for Christmas and I've been saving it specifically for this video. It's important to do your own swatches. I've found with watercolors that even if it comes with the reference color, it's not going to look like what you can get when you actually put the watercolor in a box or a swipe or whatever on a piece of paper for yourself. That way you really have an idea of what that color will look like. I always do my watercolor samples myself so I can get an idea of what the colors actually are going to look like. So I'm going to do the sample first so we can see what this color set looks like on the page, and then we'll get started with the Lightbox tracing of the lighthouse image, and then after that is completed, we will move on to doing the watercolor painting part. I told you that I was going to change the colors of my reference photo, but what if you don't feel comfortable just going off the cuff and doing that? There's a couple things you can do to play around with colors before you do your painting. That way you can see what might work and what might not work. One thing you could do is put it in a program like Photoshop Elements. This is what I am doing right here. So I just uploaded my photo, and then I went to Colorize, and in Colorize you can switch it from automatic to manual just by that little blue toggle up in the corner there. And then you can select an area of the photo, which for now I've selected the sky area, and then you select the little droplet with the button that says select droplet, and it will let you place the droplet and it will change the colors to what you select from these gradients here on the side. So you can see I'm playing around with pinks and blues and purples here, which is kind of what I was going to do for this. So you can put colors in certain areas and see if you like it, see if it works for your painting, see what it will look like before you actually commit to putting the colors in your painting. So that's something that is an easy way to see what it might look like beforehand. You can also do this in any photo editor pretty much. You could probably do this on Canva, or if you have any photo app. That's just a helpful little tip for if you're unsure about changing the colors in the photo and you want to see what it might look like first. Go ahead and, just play around with it in any sort of editing program, and it'll give you a visual idea of what might work. You can also, when you're finished, you could actually print out what you've done with the colors and go from that reference as you paint, so you can literally see the colors on the reference photo as you're working. So I just wanted to give that little tip in case you're feeling unsure about changing colors in reference photo. As I said before, it's your artwork. You're the artist, and your creativity has no limits, so you can do whatever feels right for your painting. Now we've made it to the part where we're going to trace our image onto our watercolor paper or whatever you've chosen to trace it onto. This part is pretty similar for most of my Lightbox videos. You have your photo reference, tape it down to your Lightbox, put your paper above it, tape that down too, so that way nothing wiggles around and ruins your lines. And then you just get started tracing those lines so that you have that image on your paper for when you start painting or completing your drawing. One thing I want to talk about here in doing this landscape, basically photograph, and translating that into an artwork on paper, is that idea that you do not have to include every single element from the reference photo in your drawing. Let me explain. A lot of times when transferring an image from one place to another, either a drawing onto a new surface, a photo reference onto a paper, you're looking for all of the important elements of that drawing that you're going to need later when you're turning it into a piece of artwork. For example, when you're painting. If you leave out important elements, then it's going to make it harder for you to do the artwork because you're missing important information that you need. For example, let's say that you were doing a portrait and you only basically did the outline of the hair. When you get to painting that hair, you are missing some information, like where there's a change between light and dark, where there's shadows underneath the hair. If you only have the basic outline of the hair and that's it, then you don't know how to paint the hair. So there's a really fine balance, and it takes practice and it takes doing this a couple of times to find the happy medium between including enough information so that you're not missing things when you take away the light box and the reference image, or putting in too much information so that when you go to work on it as a painting, you're overwhelmed and there's too much clutter and there's too much information on there for you to easily start working on the painting portion. That's especially true when you're doing something like this, which is a landscape, because let's say that you're working on an image like I'm working on. There's obviously some buildings, there's the lighthouse, there's the ocean, the sky, and the rocks. That's pretty much all of the big portions of this photograph. I do not need to go into the sky area and carefully trace out all those clouds. Number one, that would ruin the effect with all those pencil lines up in the clouds. And number two, that information isn't really necessary because the sky is able to be a sky without having a lot of, pencil reference images to what the sky in the photo looks like, because those clouds are very wispy. They're not well defined. So you don't need to have traced all of that information. Then if you're moving on to something like the buildings, now here's an area where you're going to want to have a little bit more information for yourself later when you take away your reference image and you're just working on your drawing, because you're going to want to know where the windows are located, what size they are, what, all of the roof lines are. All of the information in those buildings is going to help make them, number one, well defined, and number two, recognizable. For example, this is Portland Head Lighthouse in Maine. It's a very recognizable landmark. So if you don't have your reference image traced correctly, it's not going to look like Portland Head Lighthouse, and people are going to know that something's off. So you want to include enough in all of the buildings that you have that later so that you can make this look like what it's supposed to be. Then we get into the water and the rocks. Now, if you were to go and trace all of the different light changes in the rock area between the shadows and the rock parts that are jutting out and the lines, you would drive yourself absolutely insane. There is absolutely no need to have all of that information contained in your drawing unless you just want to give yourself a headache. But that area is something that you can be a little more loose with. You don't have to include all that information because you know this is a big area where there's rocks. Basically, the only things you need when you start doing your painting is what areas are light and what areas are in shadow. And if you can give yourself a general idea of where those areas fit in to that overall rock area, then you'll be able to paint it and refer back to your reference image and give yourself a good idea of what you're working with. But you don't have to painstakingly trace every single one of those lines because we'd be here all day. The same thing with the ocean water and also with the rocky shoreline. There's a lot of information there in the photograph, and you don't need all that information for your painting. You need the basics, outlining where the water and the rocks meet. That's important to have, but you don't need to painstakingly outline every bit of wave, every bit of foam, every change in color, because that would give you way too much information and it would be overwhelming. There'd be too many pencil lines cluttering up your painting, and the information you're giving yourself is too overwhelming. So I hope that explanation makes sense in helping you with your tracing of your photo reference image so that you can start to look for what is important and what will I need later when I'm painting this. What things will I need to know? What parts of this image are necessary to contain within my artwork, and what things can I leave out, because there are even things in photo reference of images that you don't even have to trace onto your paper because they may not be that important, or they may look ugly, kind of like the things that people would crop out of a photograph with Photoshop. You just don't have to trace those areas. You can leave that out of there completely and do something else with that area of the drawing. So as the artist, you have that choice, and at the beginning it's going to be a little bit intimidating because you're going to think, I need all this information because I don't know what I'm doing. However, over time you do find that you rely on that less and less, and you just kind of can gauge what is necessary for you to create a painting as you're going through the photograph and realizing what lines are important for you to trace and what lines are not necessarily as important. Here's another tip that I wanted to share that you might find helpful. Even though I have the photo reference image on my Lightbox under my paper, I also have it printed out in front of me on the desk, and I also have it pulled up on my laptop, which is beside me. I find this very helpful because I can scroll in on my computer to different parts as I'm working. So if there's a line or an area that I'm unsure about, then I can just look over here at my computer and I can scroll in on that area, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that looks like. And it's just another way of giving yourself the information you need to complete the tracing of what you're working on. Once I've finished tracing the reference photo onto my watercolor paper, I am now done with the Lightbox. So I take my paper and I tape it down to my desk just so it doesn't move around. And I am going to start, obviously, painting with watercolor. What I do is I put down a light wash to begin with of just the colors I'm going to use, just kind of establishing where each color is going to go. The first layers are going to seem very light and very watery, but that's good because they dry light and then you just go over them again. So basically, this next part is just putting down the color where I want it to go and building up those layers of color as much as I want them to be built up. That's really an individual choice, so that's something that you, as an artist, can make with your own painting, whatever you're deciding to paint. And then as each layer dries, you can just kind of decide, okay, is this, where I want it to be at? Do I want to add more color? Do I want this to be darker or more vibrant? That sort of thing. So that's kind of the fun of watercolor, is that you can really just relax and see where it takes you. And there's not a lot of pressure to get it perfect because watercolor is very imperfect, which if you're okay with that, working in that way, it really is kind of a relaxing way to paint. I noticed my lighthouse looking a little bit wonky on the top. It kind of looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, like something's off. And I realized it's because that part where it just pointed is not supposed to be dark, it's supposed to show sky. So I have this little electric eraser, and I just erase the dark area there because that's supposed to be like the fence around the lighthouse, and then I'm going to color it in with the pink so that it takes that weird spot away. At this point, I wanted to give a quick little showing of the reference photo that I used and a side-by-side with the painting that I am working on. So here are both the reference photo and the watercolor painting side by side, and you can see that when I was talking about, you know, you're the artist and you can choose what you want your artwork to look like. I knew I didn't want to copy the colors in this photo, number one, because I was wanting to use that set specifically of Daniel Smith watercolors, and these were the colors in that set. And number two, I don't find this color scheme in the actual photo to be very interesting to me for doing an artwork. Other people might disagree, that's fine, but this was the type of thing that I wanted. I wanted the vibrant pink, I wanted the deep blues and purples. Like, that was just what I was going for. So I'm very happy with the fact that yes, it's the same setup as in the photo, but that the colors, I went off the rails and just did my own thing, and that's where I'm at this point. And I'm just finishing up layering more watercolor if I feel like the color needs to be amplified some, putting on the colored pencils in the areas that I want to emphasize, especially down here on the rocks. I haven't got to this area yet where the shoreline will be, but that will be another area that I'll probably go over with some watercolor and some colored pencil. The house and the lighthouse part are probably pretty much done. This needs a little more work, and then I'm gonna work on the fence line. And then obviously I added this tree that is not in the photo, but I felt like I wanted to give some visual like blockage for that end of the photo, or reference, I guess, so that the house didn't just end and then your eye just kind of wanders off the page. Instead, that tree is there to kind of block you from looking away and kind of bring you back to here to look at the rest of the painting. It's just kind of a visual way of keeping somebody in the painting. And so I'm happy about that tree. I'll do a little more detail on it, but yeah, so you can change things, you can add things, you can, you know, do whatever you want to do as the artist to make the painting, you know, what you envisioned it to be or what you were hoping it would be. You don't have to be stuck in copying a photo exactly. You can use the photo as an inspiration, as a reference, but then you're free to do what you want with that photo. We've reached the part where the drawing is complete. The watercolor painting has been done. I've put some colored pencil. So how do you finish a painting? And what are those final touches that kind of just make it complete? There's a couple answers to that. A lot of artists will say that none of their paintings are ever complete. You just kind of decide to stop working on it because it's done enough for you. So my final steps for completing this painting were to go over the rock area again with a wash of the brown color and then wipe away some of that to show the underneath with a plastic credit card. And it really worked to give it that rock, you know, coastline quality. So I really like how that turned out. And basically I added a little bit of color to where the sand / rocks should be for the beach part. And then I went over the water with like a stippling kind of brush and some white gouache, and I just kind of lightly rubbed some white gouache there to give it that foamy ocean wave appearance. And then the last part I'm doing here is just adding some white details to the rocks, and pretty much that's where I'm going to call it finished. And that's the kind of the thing about art and completing a painting. It's up to you when it's done. So whenever you're happy and feel like it's as complete as you can make it. And here is the completed watercolor. I hope you enjoyed watching this video where we took a tracing of a reference photo using a Lightbox, turned it into a watercolor drawing, and then completed it using some mixed media elements. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you have not. I do videos like this. I also do other art-related videos. I hope this video helped you to see that you can use your Lightbox to help you trace a reference photo of not just portraits, but other types of artwork as well. You can do landscapes, you can do objects if you want to. Pretty much anything that you're wanting to turn into an artwork, you can have a Lightbox help you do that. Please leave me any comments that if you have any other suggestions of what type of Lightbox videos you'd like to see. And I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great day. Bye.